Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this Android development series. Now in this video or lesson we are going to observe how HTTP protocol works. And this is quite important to know because if you would like your Android application to start communicate with the outside world, for example getting certain data, sending certain data, then you're going to need to send everything and receive everything over the HTTP protocol. And since this is not handled automatically by Android or by the SDK, for example, you're gonna have to start writing the HTTP client yourself. Now, writing the HTTP client is not that difficult as long as you understand how the HTTP request and HTTP response look like and how it works. And once you know how it works and everything, when we're gonna come to code, everything will make sense. So let's get started. So what is exactly the HTTP? What is it? HTTP is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and it is a protocol that has been written, the standard has been written since 1991, and if you would like to have a look at this protocol specifically, you can see it right there. This is the standard, and as you can see somewhere, the copyright or the latest update was around 1999, not 1991. There you go. Copyright, Internet Society 1999. So here, everything is described how an HTTP protocol work and how, if you're going to implement, for example, your own HTTP client or your own web server, if you'd like to code something like your own Apache or your own IIS or something like that, then you're gonna have to comply with the standard, and everything here is written, specifically just for that. So that's why that's why whoever was actually working on Apache, for example, and they were programming Apache, let's say, they were always referring to this documentation describing every bit and piece of how HTTP should work. However, we will not dive very deep, or will not dive deep at all into this. We're gonna just simply have an overview. It is something that you could have, for example, for further reading, just for fun, or you like to know more about how HTTP work and all these stuff. Just feel free to go here and learn more about it. So URLs. Now URLs are very important. This is how you actually gonna, for example, start getting data from the internet. This is what your web browser needs in order to communicate or to consume to consume certain resources from the internet. So if you look at URL is a Uniform Resource Locators, and if you look at the simple URL like this, you can actually divide it into basic three sections. You get the HTTP, which is the URL scheme, which describes which protocol you are using. It could happen to be SMTP. It could happen to be FTP. So it depends which protocol you are using. You're gonna need to supply this part all the time. Okay. Now the next section comes in, which is the host. The section afterwards right now describes where the resource is located. So this is very important for you if you would like to get any resource from the internet, whether you are a web browser, whether you are making an HTTP client, like a web browser, or your Android application would like to communicate over the internet. You're gonna have to supply some sort of URL that complies with that scheme. Okay. Now a URL could in fact contain a port number, a query string, or just a simple fragment. So if you look over here at this example of a URL, basically your web browser hides from you, let's say, the 80 part. That means that you are communicating over port 80 all the time. And since the HTTP protocol is always, let's say, it's mostly using port 80 unless you specify something else in the web server configuration. The browser, if you, for example, have a local web server, your own web server, and you change the configuration, let's say that your web server will communicate over a different port, not the port 80, then you're going to have to supply it manually. Other than that, most of all of the internet is most of it, in fact, is running on that port. So whenever you are requiring google.com and you write write :80, the browser will immediately omit that from the take it out, because it's anyway it's putting it there for you automatically. Now it comes, you get the resource, and then you get the hash with the with a certain fragment. This part is actually the fragment, and if you would like to see this in action, if I go, for example, to the Wikipedia page of a HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, you get the web page, which is this is your host and this is your resource. And then if you would like to see the fragment, for example, if I select or click on the request methods, it will redirect you to a section within the page, and as you can see here, I get a fragment added into this link now, or this URL. The query side is, I believe you have seen it a lot when you have, for example, a question mark, for example, followed by for example, your parameter equals to, and then a certain ID, or for example, let's say ID equals to 2, and right here, this is your query. So for example, if you are hunting for a student with an ID equals to 1 or 2, usually people supply these queries in the web browser like this, in the link. So the URL scheme standard supports it. Although some people, of course, they consider it as a bad practice. Usually, like, you shouldn't show this off. You should like mask it out, encrypt it, or whatever. So these practices we are not going to discuss at all. We are just simply having a quick overview over URLs. So this is how a query could look like, generally speaking. You get the key value pair. So this is the key, what the parameter which you are looking for, and the value which you would like to pass in order to get a certain data based on the value you passed. All right. So yeah, there you go. Here's how the query as well looks like. All right. Now, when you're trying to send certain data over the internet, you have text, you have images, you have animations, video, flash, you have a lot of media types that you can use and send over the internet. So in order for your web browser to recognize these data and to say, okay, I would like to render this image as an image, not to render it as a text. I would like, for example, to render that text as a text, not as an image, for example. Or when I see an SWF animation or Flash animation, right now I'm gonna start playing the animation in the web browser. If you would like to make your web browser start, understanding which data type it should, and for example, which media type it should handle and how it will handle it, you're gonna have to provide the media type of the resource. So for example, if you are sending back to your browser an image, you're gonna have to say to the browser, by the way, this is an image. So right now the browser should interpret it and render it as an image. If you don't specify that, as a header, and we're gonna come to the request headers or the response headers later, if you don't say that explicitly, this is gonna be an image, or the web server, when it replies with a response, if it doesn't say this is an image, most probably the web browser will render it as a text. So there's a table of that of these resources and media types. It's called MIME types, which is multi-purpose internet mail extensions. And in fact, they were used in the old days. They were used in the email, through emails, through email protocols. So for example, if somebody sends you an email and you would like to attach something to the email, to attach a document, a resource, an image, and so on and so forth, your email client usually uses this MIME type table in order to interpret what kind of resource you gave, and based on that it will serve it to the user. If you would like to have a look at the MIME types, this one is a huge table of MIME types. So Give it a second. So this is all MIME types that exist on the internet, almost, you can say so. So you have everything in there. You have, for example, JPEG, you have PDF, you have the SWF, you have everything in there. And if you are programming your own Apache IIS, you know, whatever web server you are programming, then you're gonna have to have some sort of you're gonna have, in fact, you're gonna have to have this table included into your web server. So whenever you are starting processing or you know, processing data, processing requests, processing responses, you're gonna have to send this with a header with a MIME type, and you're gonna need this table in order to comprehend all of the data types that could be possible thrown out through on the internet. All right, so let's move forward. Now there's something very you have to understand, and it's very, very important about URLs, which is the URL encoding. Now there are some certain things they are not allowed to do. For example, putting special characters in the URL is well, trying to avoid them as much as you can. For example, if you have a website or if you have a web service, and we're going to come to that later when we start programming our own web service, do not put spaces in your folders. So for example, if you are if you look at most of the URLs, all of them, they don't have any spaces. So these folders, they don't have spaces. Even the file, even the resource names that have spaces. And you can see it over here as well, over here as well, well, okay, and over here as well. There are no spaces in there, and because space is a special character, other characters that are not preferred to have, for example, are these. So these are for example, these characters are used for specific purposes that have that are reserved by the URL scheme. So for example, the forward, let's say, let's see here. For example, the equals, there you go, the equals, for example, is used for querying. If you are not going to use equals for querying, then you're going to have to give its escaping or hexadecimal representation of it. So you're going to have to represent it in a different way because it's not used in its context, in its necessary context. So for example, if you are not going to use it for querying, then that means it's included in the name of the files or in the name of your resources. Right now you're going to have to escape it. So these guys are reserved characters. These guys are forbidden to use as they are, and they have to be always escaped. And they are called the unsafe, they are marked as unsafe characters. And for more information about that, you can visit this webpage. So as you can see here, for example, the space, it will be replaced with 20. And if you look, I think it is not there. In fact, the dollar sign, there you go, the percent sign is used for escaping URL characters. Okay, so for example, if you have for example a website that has a certain space in its name, like this, so you're gonna have let's say if it has a space like URL encoding, then you're gonna have to escape this with a 20, like so. And if you I think already Android has the URL encoding scheme, so you can actually pass the encoder. You pass your URL through that automatic encoder, so whatever you have spaces, it will immediately encode the URL correctly. Otherwise, if you don't have that encoder built into your framework or SDK, then you're gonna have to program that on your own. Other than that, I advise you just to avoid these spaces if you are starting to put your web services together. All right. Okay, let's move forward to more interesting stuff. So HTTP messages. Now, according to the HTTP standard, an HTTP request is usually sent from your PC to the server, or to the web server, if you may, and in turn you're gonna get an HTTP response. This piece is called a single HTTP transaction. Now, you could in fact send an HTTP request manually. So for instance, let's say we can actually use telnet this time, and let's say you would like to send you send a request to google.com to get its logo and display it on your screen. Now this is how a very simple, very primitive request would look like. Now in order to do that, I will first of all, you need, if you would like to try that, you need to go to Windows, turn on or off Windows features, and turn on the Telnet client. Once it is installed, you can start, for example, your PowerShell or your hang on a sec. So for example, I will grab the Windows PowerShell right here, and I will start typing in my request. So first thing I need to do is to telnet google.com, and if I say telnet without the port number, as far as I remember, it will hunt for port 21 because this is the telnet port as far as I remember. If you hit enter right now, it will try to connect to google.com on that port. Now of course it will not work out, so I need to control C that. Hang on a sec. Well, okay, apparently it just stuck right there. Okay, let me launch the PowerShell again. PowerShell. Okay, and right here I'm going to type in telnet www.google.com and 80. And right now I'm in telnet. Right now the web server is ready, or on Google side is ready to receive my requests. So right now I'm gonna have to write this request. I've actually opened my web browser just to ensure that I will get the logo. Okay, so I'll Control C that, and I'll write here. For some certain reason, the rendering of telnet command somehow it doesn't exist. I don't know why. So when I'm gonna write the get, it's not gonna be rendered. So get space, and when I put the right click, it just pastes the URL, and then I have to write in my so you say the get. So I would like to get a resource, and then you write in the standard version. So right here I'm gonna have to write in the HTTP/1.1, enter. And well, was it enter? Oop, there you go. In fact, I should have written the host, but somehow it didn't. But anyway, it actually accepted without the host, so it probably inferred the host from the link. So if you look here, this is the response from the server. It says HTTP/101 200 OK. The content type, which is the MIME type, there you go, image/PNG. And this is the last modified, and this is the part where it comes to header, and we're gonna discuss in the next couple slides what is the how is the response, what is the what are the names of these sections in the response. But if you look here, I start getting the file. So this starts the body of my response. So this is how your PNG file looks like. And by the way, this is right now the browser's job to interpret or to take this data and render it on the screen. Okay, so let's move forward and see more details about these methods. Now, there are a couple methods when you are sending an HTTP request. There are several methods you have in your hand. The most primary HTTP method is get and post. So both of them are the most famous methods, and they are the driving force of the whole the World Wide Web. So get is to retrieve a resource. Post is to update a resource. Usually you are sending a data and you are waiting for a response. In a get, you are just simply saying, let me read from the hard drive that resource without sending any additional data. So let's see how the request message looks like. Now, if a request message is sent, and as you can see, we already have written this. I have written the get method, and then I've written the URL, which is the resource which I wanted to send, which I wanted to get, which is our Google image or logo of Google, and the version, which was the HTTP/101. This is called the starting line. Next, we put the headers. So, for example, I could put in there. Usually I put there the host. For some certain reason I couldn't see that, so I just, apparently the host was included automatically. But sometimes as well you don't want to include only the host, but you would like to include more about, let's say, the content negotiation. So for example, when you are, if you are using, let's say, you are in a different country, so we are here in Bosnia, let's say, and you would like to access Google. What happens is your web browser is sending inside the header the accepted language, under the accepted language header, and then it says it describes your language. It gives the language ISO code, I think. And what happens is if the web server finds a resource that matches your language, it will retrieve you immediately Google page into Bosnian, for example. If you are in France or if you are in Germany, your Google page will be immediately presented in Germany, since it is actually the preferred language. If you would like to switch that, you can go to your regional settings and your languages in Windows, and then you can just simply change that. You can, for example, if you change your preferred language in your Windows settings to English, you will automatically get google.com in English most of the time. For example, the user agent, here you are sending which browser you are. So if you are sending, for example, a request from Chrome, you could get a response based on your web browser. So if you are, for example, a web browser that is on mobile, for example, and you're saying, okay, I'm a mobile web browser, you're gonna, for example, get the web service or the web server. If it finds the version, a mobile version of your website, it will immediately retrieve it. Other than that, it will just simply retrieve the original website. If modified sense is good in case, for example, for caching, if you would like to, once you load a website, it will actually download all the resources, let's say all the images, animations, and so on the hard drive. And then when you load it, come back to it again, in order to make it faster load, it will immediately check, okay, did the logo change since the last access? If no, then just simply load the resource from the hard drive. If yes, then just simply download it again, overwrite it again in the cache, and then move on. All right. Now there's a very important thing you have to know, is that there are two different, the difference between get and post. Post is unsafe and get is a safe request, because get is just a simple reading from the hard drive, but the post is in fact is quite how can I say, it's quite dangerous, because right now you are sending data you are sending some certain data to modify data on the other side, whether it's just a query you are sending, get me that student, or get me that person by ID or by name or whatever, or you are, for example, starting deleting and modifying data. By the way, if you look here, these two functions are the most ones that are used. If you are making your own IIS or something like that, then you're gonna use this. Then you're gonna have to implement these according to the HTTP protocol standard. If not, if you are just simply an HTTP client, just avoid those, because even a web service could. There are some web servers. I mean, they could even, as in the firewalls and the hardware firewalls, they could even reject your request, especially, for example, you are using, for example, delete, let's say, to remove a resource or something like that. So most of the time you are using, if you'd like to remove a resource or modify a resource, you are always using a post. So so be careful when you are sending, when you are using, in fact, the post method. All right, this is how a full request looked like. And if you can see here, there are a couple of things which I didn't mention yet, which is, for example, the content length. So right now, when you, for example, send this is, for example, this is a get, and this is the response header. Um, uh, so basically, actually, this should be the response message. Sorry about that. So yeah, okay, it doesn't matter. So basically, this is the request, and this is your full response. And if you have the content length, it tells the browser how much it should need or should wait in order to render the whole data. You don't need, for example, to receive half of the data and display half of it and then you just go on. You need to display the whole web page. So that's why they always provide the content length. If you look here, the headers, this part of the header, you get the X hyphen, and so on and so forth. These headers are reserved for the non-standard headers. So for example, if you have an ASP.NET web page, it could be X ASP or X Microsoft, and then it says ASP application or ASP web page, or vice versa. So basically, these, whenever you see a header with an X before it, that X hyphen, and then the rest of the scheme or the rest of the header description comes in, that means it's just it's a non-standard header, and it's basically any web browser which implement the feature of recognizing these headers will recognize them. Other than that, it will not recognize them appropriately. Again, yeah, this is how your response, which you have seen in the previous slides, the response message. This is a response message contained of the version, the status, and the reason, which is description of the status. So if you look here, the HTTP/101/200, it's 200 is the status. The description of that status is okay. That means that everything is successful. So 200 is the how can I say, this is the best message you can get ever. If you don't have any other, if you have any other one, then probably you are in a problem or something like that. The headers kicks in. And then the body of the request, which is, for example, when I was doing a request to the Android developers website, the body was the HTML website. Or, for example, in our case here, this is the body of our response. So whenever you send a request, this is, in fact, the body of the response. Okay? Let's come to the final stage of our presentation here, which is the connections. So HTTP protocol is in fact an application layer protocol. So basically, you have a web browser, which is let's say an HTTP client, is sending a request to the server, which is a HTTP, for example, server, or basically it's an HTTP server. So it goes from the application part. So you send the HTTP request to the TCP layer, which will ensure and make 100% sure that your request will be packaged correctly and sent over the network, and there will be no losses. Over to the IP or the Internet Protocol, which the Internet Protocol job will start, hopping over routers and make sure that you reach to the destination correctly. In fact, TCP is making sure that you reach the destination correctly. The IP, let's say, is the driver, which like hops over routers until it reaches the destination, and then all that is being sent through a data link, which is in our case Ethernet. It could be any other media, and then through the internet and then everything is reversed backwards. So it goes to the data link, goes to the IP protocol, and then goes to the TCP, and then your application gets this stream of bytes and just simply start the web service start interpreting them, to interpret or parse the stream of bytes, and then once it parses it out, it will just simply receive that request, and if everything is okay, if that request for that resource, if the resource exists, then you're gonna get that the result of the response is gonna be sent back using the same way. Okay, so this is the very, very basic idea behind how the HTTP protocol works. This is the very, I really scratched the surface very, very, how can I say, in a very, very light way. If you would like to learn more about the HTTP protocol, there is a very nice series of articles. Actually, this presentation, this presentation slides, is based on the HTTP Fundamentals series by Scott Allen on odetocode.com, and this is the website, and it's really great. For example, I posted every part as a separate link, and you can have, you just simply the whole series is there, so you can jump in whenever you would like, and everything is just pretty much described as what I've already described in the slides, but with a little bit more detail, and it's very, very good to have that. In fact, I discussed with you like the first three, which we needed in order for our Android application to communicate with the server side. If you would like to learn more, you just go ahead and continue reading with the architecture and security. All right, so I think this is it. So in the next lesson, we're gonna start working with PHP in order to create a simple web service, and I will give first a PHP primer. How to work, how to make a PHP script, and then I will move on and then create a PHP web service, and then later on I'm gonna make an Android application that consumes that web service and send us the data back. So see you in the next lesson.